I think most people have an image in their head of what alcoholism looks like, and I think, for a long time, that image is exactly what let people like me hide in plain sight. I want to spend this video pulling that image apart, piece by piece, using my own story, because I think the truth is a lot less cinematic and a lot more insidious than most of us imagine. The image most people carry looks something like this: a person who has lost their job, their home, someone visibly falling apart, someone everyone around them can immediately identify as having a problem. That image is real for some people. It was never accurate for me, and I suspect it isn't accurate for a lot of people quietly struggling right now while watching this. For most of the years I was drinking at a level that would eventually nearly destroy my life. I looked, from the outside, completely fine. I held a job, I paid my bills, mostly on time. I showed up to family events, even hosted a few. If you had met me during that period, I don't think alcoholic is the word that would have come to mind. This is the first truth about alcoholism I want to name clearly. It is a progressive disease, not a single dramatic event, and for a long time it is entirely compatible with looking from the outside like nothing is wrong at all. I want to walk through how that progression actually happened for me, because I think the specific mechanics of it matter more than the general concept. It started, honestly, as something that looked like normal social drinking. A drink after work. A few drinks on weekends with friends. Nothing that would have concerned anyone, including me. The shift happened so gradually that I genuinely cannot point to a single day where it crossed a line, because there wasn't one. There was only a slow, almost imperceptible movement, year over year, in what counted as a normal amount and in what I was using that amount for. Somewhere in there, the purpose of the drinking changed, even though I didn't notice it changing at the time. It stopped being about enjoying a drink with people I liked and became about managing a feeling I didn't want to have. Anxiety before a hard conversation. Numbness after a bad day. A specific, persistent static of unease that had been living underneath my ribs for years that I had never learned any other way to quiet. This is the second truth I want to name, because I think it's the one most misunderstood. Alcoholism, for most people who develop it, isn't really about the alcohol itself. It's about what the alcohol is being used to manage, and how efficiently, at least at first, it seems to manage it. The third truth, and maybe the hardest one, is about denial, because I want to describe how sophisticated my own denial actually was. Not the simple picture of someone refusing to admit an obvious problem. My denial wasn't stupidity. It was, in its own twisted way, a kind of intelligence. A constant creative process of finding new evidence that I was fine. Every single time some part of me raised a concern, I told myself I couldn't have a problem because I never drank in the morning, until the year that stopped being true. And then I told myself it was fine because it was only coffee first. I told myself I couldn't have a problem because I never missed work, until I started calling in sick with increasing frequency. And then I told myself that was just stress, unrelated to drinking. Every single time the evidence shifted, my definition of fine quietly shifted along with it, always staying just one step ahead of whatever the truth actually was. I think this is the piece that nobody tells you clearly enough. The disease doesn't just make you drink. It makes you exceptionally skilled at explaining to yourself and everyone else why the drinking isn't actually the problem. By the time I reached what I'd call my actual rock bottom, the night I've described elsewhere, the one that finally broke through all of this, I had been quietly rock bottoming, in smaller ways, for years. Small humiliations I explained away, small losses of trust I told myself were temporary. Small physical warning signs I attributed to stress, to poor sleep, to getting older, to anything except the actual cause sitting in the glass in my hand. I want to be specific about what finally made the difference, because I think it matters. It wasn't that the final night was objectively worse than everything that came before it, in terms of raw consequences. It was that, for the first time, I ran out of a new explanation. Every previous crisis I had managed to explain away within a day or two, and life had continued. This time, sitting on that floor the next morning, I searched for the explanation, the reframe, the story that would let me keep going the way I had been, and for the first time in years, I couldn't find one. That's what rock bottom actually was, in my experience, not the worst single event. The moment the machinery of denial, which had been running flawlessly for years, finally jammed. I think this matters because I don't want anyone watching this to wait for their version of a dramatic, unmistakable rock bottom before taking this seriously. Some people never get one. Some people's disease progresses quietly for decades, always staying just below the threshold of an undeniable crisis, while still slowly costing them everything that actually matters. Presence with the people they love, health, the version of themselves they might otherwise have become. I also want to address a myth I believed for years, because I think it's common. The idea of the functioning alcoholic is somehow a lesser, less serious category. I use that phrase about myself constantly, as a kind of shield. I'm not like those people. I told myself I'm still functioning. What I understand now is that functioning was never a sign I was fine. It was simply the specific shape my particular denial happened to take. The disease doesn't require you to lose everything visibly before it's real. It only requires that alcohol has become something you cannot reliably control, regardless of how well you've managed to hide that fact from everyone, including yourself. If any part of what I've described here, the shifting rules, the disappearing evidence, the quiet, creative denial, sounds familiar to you, I want to say this clearly. You do not need to wait for a worse night than the ones you've already had. The moment the explanations stop working is not something you have to wait passively for. It's something you can choose to stop generating right now, today, before the disease decides to take that choice away from you, the way it eventually took it from me. If you're recognizing yourself in this and you're not sure where to start, the SAMHSA National Helpline, 1-800-662-4357, is free, confidential, and available any hour, day or night. Tell me in the comments which part of this hit closest to home, the shifting rules, the hidden mornings, or the specific exhaustion of running out of explanations. And subscribe, because the next video goes 20 years past all of this, into what almost nobody tells you about what long-term sobriety actually looks like, day to day. The truth about alcoholism is that it rarely announces itself. It just quietly moves the line year after year, until one day you look up and don't recognize where the line even is anymore. I hope you don't have to wait as long as I did to look up.